Chairmen of both the House Armed Services and Intelligence Committees are raising a red flag, urging the White House to respond to Moscow's breach of a nuclear weapons treaty. So while we're talking about the debate, this is something very real that's happening in Congress. My next guest warns that going to war is a distinct possibility if the world doesn't acknowledge the threat posed by Vladimir Putin. Retired General Richard Sheriff is the former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander for Europe. He's author of War with Russia, an urgent warning from senior military command. That's a novel, but it almost plays out a little bit like a war game, if you will. General, it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
The juxtaposition for someone like you must be really interesting, watching the debate happen between two potential presidents, but also hearing from our own lawmakers some real concerns about Russia, what Russia is doing. What are your observations just in general? What do you think the American public should know?
Well, I think we need to understand the real and present danger that potentially a resurgent Russia poses, the dynamic that was started with the invasion of Crimea in 2014, the ramp-up of military spending by Russia, the build-up of military forces, particularly the spotlight it throws on the Baltic states, which of course have significant Russian-speaking minorities, and the reality of the importance of building up our deterrent capability as a NATO alliance to protect and defend the alliance.
How bad is it, General, right now?
Well, I think, to be honest, the NATO alliance is a great alliance, the most successful alliance the world has seen, but there are plenty of indications that the emperor's clothes are pretty skimpy when it comes to an effective deterrence posture. So the point of the book is to highlight the weaknesses and hopefully generate the sort of debate among people to understand what really needs to be done.
What does need to be done?
Well, we need to see an effective, credible military capability, I think, forward-based in the Baltic states. We need to see effective NATO reserves that can reinforce them, an effective concept of defense worked through, practiced, deployed. We need to see an increase in defense spending among European nations particularly, but underpinning everything is the paramount importance of American lead of NATO and that absolute certainty that if any NATO member is attacked, that America will honor the key foundation of NATO, Article 5, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
I want to play a little sound from last night's debate as we digest what both candidates have said about Russia. Chris Wallace asked a question about a no-fly zone in Syria and what would happen if Russia was violating that no-fly zone. Would the United States shoot down a Russian plane? Here's what Hillary Clinton had to say.
I think a no-fly zone could save lives and could hasten the end of the conflict. I am well aware of the really legitimate concerns that you have expressed from both the President and the General. This would not be done just on the first day. This would take a lot of negotiation.
Just want to take in what she said also while playing out some of the video we have of Hillary Clinton handing the Russians the Russian reset button that we've talked so much about over the years. What do you think is at stake? And what about, for example, a no-fly zone if Russia violates it? How close are we to a confrontation that could end result in war?
Well, there's no doubt that one way of protecting civilians and controlling the continued fighting in Aleppo would be to establish a no-fly zone. But we need to understand fully the implications of this and go in eyes wide open. This is a major operation of war. The Syrian air defense system is highly sophisticated. Of course, it's Russian. And any form of shoot down of Syrian or Russian aircraft could be a major spark. So I think we need to really understand the potential consequences. And part of that is understanding that the Russians would look at this in a holistic strategic picture. Then for them there's no separation from what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the Middle East, and indeed perhaps what's going on in Asia. So it highlights the importance of strong, effective deterrence to minimize the risk of any form of spillover elsewhere.
And so that's fundamentally the argument from Donald Trump, is that the West has been weakened by actions by somebody like Hillary Clinton, that it's very difficult to come back from the point that we are at with Russia. Are we at the point, General, where America is at a point of no return in showing that we still are leaders and that we will still confront Russia?
No, I don't think the West has been weakened by American weakness. I would say America remains a bastion of strength in the West. I think I would put the spotlight on Europe, frankly. And successive American secretaries of state have rightly criticized European nations for failing to step up to the mark in defense spending. No, we need to be focused on NATO. We need to, under American leadership, and we can do this. This is not, this is not impossible to achieve. It just requires the political will to build on the strength of the NATO alliance, which, of course, has survived the test of time and gives all the 28 nations who are members of it a degree of political and military strength that they'd otherwise not get if they were operating alone.
One of the news items, again, that's sort of getting buried today is it looks like the White House is going to use a commission that hasn't been used in 16 years to double check whether or not Russia is following through with some of the treaties that we have when it comes to arms control. So again, all of this is playing out in the background while the spotlight is on the U.S. elections. And General, because our viewers often might see some very scary headlines about Russia, I would just like to go back to your experience yet again and what keeps you up at night and what we can do better as a nation to make sure that we don't have a confrontation with Russia.
Well, what concerns me is, number one, I think the lack of ambition and the lack of recognition of the dangers that we face across the Western alliance as a whole, the NATO alliance. I think there would be a real concern if there was any hint of America not being prepared to underpin the NATO alliance, to lead the NATO alliance, and to implement Article 5.
General
Collective defense.
It's nice having you on the program. We look forward to having you back. Appreciate your experience and your service, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
На этой неделе отношения России и США совершили резкий, хотя и ожидаемый поворот. Прогибаться дальше, слушая вранье из Вашингтона, уже не имеет смысла и просто вредно. Когда я говорю «прогибаться», то имею в виду те нормальные дипломатические компромиссы, на которые Россия шла с американцами до сих пор, веря в искренность наших партнеров. О чем речь? Например, о бесконечных ожиданиях, что США наконец-то разделят среди своих клиентов в Сирии террористов от нетеррористов. Ждем уже больше года, исходя из того, что они действительно этого хотят. А они не хотят. Просто дурачат нас, как и весь мир. Америке нравится Ан-Нусра. Америка действует на стороне Ан-Нусры, прикрывая ее дипломатически, создает ей дополнительные боевые возможности через якобы ошибочные удары с воздуха по сирийской армии, через поставки вооружения якобы умеренной оппозиции, через вспышки ненависти по отношению к России в ручных проамериканских СМИ. Мы уже так нахлебались всего этого, что глупо продолжать. Если ориентироваться на их разводки и дальше, то мы утратим цель в Сирии и сам смысл нашего присутствия там. В конце концов, Россия на законных основаниях взялась помочь легальному сирийскому правительству очистить страну от террористов. Тем самым мы защищаем от них и ближневосточный регион, и Россию, и Европу. Желающие могут присоединяться. Американцы было подключились, потом раздумали и прекратили с Россией военное сотрудничество по Сирии, о чем в этот понедельник и объявили. При одном исключении – соглашение об избежании случайных инцидентов между вооруженными силами США и России остается в силе. Пока. Формально положение вернулось к тому, что было до 9 сентября, даты, с которой Лавров и Керри договорились о новом перемирии. Но тогда в игру вступил министр обороны США Эштон Картер. Он открыл второй фронт. Только не путать с открытием второго фронта американцами к концу битвы с Гитлером. Вторым фронтом в Европе против фашистов. Не думайте, что Эштон Картер в духе антигитлеровской коалиции открыл второй фронт в битве с террористами в Сирии, поддержав Москву и Дамаск. Глава Пентагона Эштон Картер заставил Керри биться на два фронта. Если раньше госсекретарь США думал, что соперничает лишь с русскими, то теперь он попал под дружественный огонь со стороны вооруженных сил США. Да под такой, что все его дипломатические усилия пошли на смарку. Американская авиация стала впрямую бомбить расположение сирийских войск у города Дейр-эз-Зор. Это был не единичный вроде бы промах, а, как сейчас уже понятно, скоординированная с террористами операция, после которой те перешли в наступление, как ждали. А потом мутная провокация с гуманитарным конвоем под Алеппо, уж слишком похожая то ли на инсценировку, то ли на заготовку. В результате в Москве становится понятным, что и дипломатия, и дипломаты для США – лишь сервис для тамошних военных. Керри и его госдеп – лишь штатские, которые где-то на паркете в интеллигентном стиле оправдывают и сопровождают желания и действия Пентагона. Часто постфактум. К этой, в общем-то, дикой конструкции мы сегодня еще вернемся. И подробно проанализируем радикальные перемены в наших отношениях с Америкой с такими нюансами этой недели, как отправка в Средиземное море 3 ракетных кораблей нашего Черноморского флота с крылатыми ракетами «Калибр», развертывание в Сирии дополнительной системы С-300, решение о переброске в Египет 5000 наших десантников, разрыв с Америкой 3 соглашений в атомной сфере и, конечно, про прошедшие на этой неделе учения гражданской обороны России, где отрабатывалась, на всякий случай, защита ни много ни мало 40 миллионов человек. Такого на моей памяти еще не было никогда.
I've been calling for a no-fly zone to stop the barrel bombing, and I asked this colleague of mine on the other side of the aisle if he would support that, and he said yes. He said, I want to call it something else rather than a no-fly zone, but that this particular senator, it is a fact that this particular senator has now changed his position and would like us to take action to prevent the barrel bombing. What is your position about that, and wouldn't it help if we took decisive action and ended this carnage?
I don't know the specific proposal which you're discussing with your colleague. Make one comment and then see if the chairman wants to add anything.
I think he was talking about a no-fly zone, but described in more palatable terms.
There are a number of different proposals have been made, but the one that I think focus on right now is the one Secretary Kerry's trying to promote, namely a no-fly zone for the Russians and the Syrians who are attacking the Syrian people. If they're talking about a no-fly zone for American aircraft fighting ISIL, needless to say, that's not going to get any enthusiasm, get strong opposition from me. But I think that's what it's. But it's not called that. But Secretary Kerry's trying to get a stand down of the Syrian and Russian Air Force, and if he's successful, that would be a good thing. You ask the chairman if he has anything to add.
Senator, the only thing I'd say is, as the situation on the ground changes, I think I have a responsibility, we, the Joint Force, has a responsibility to make sure the President has a full range of options. We have discussed that issue in the past under certain conditions. The conditions on the ground will change, and we'll continue to look at those options and make sure they're available to the President.
What about the option of controlling the airspace so that barrel bombs cannot be dropped?
All the options.
What do you think of that option, sir?
Right now, Senator, for us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war against Syria and Russia.
This footage, broadcast by Russian state TV and other channels in early October, shows Russians taking part in 4-day-long emergency and civil defense drills across the country. Some 40 million people ultimately participated in what was the biggest test run of its kind since the fall of the USSR.
А вот куда бежать в случае бомбежки, половина не знает.
The drills were designed to train people how to survive in the event of a nuclear attack or other disasters.
Обязанность любого государства – обеспечение безопасности населения, защита граждан.
The Emergencies Ministry said it was preparing bomb shelters throughout Moscow that would accommodate the entire population of the capital.
Осматривают все подземные помещения, они подойдут, чтобы переждать налеты.
Videos of emergency workers in gas masks and preparatory tests for bomb shelters were prominently aired, and commentators on state TV could be heard making anti-American statements.
России надоело высокомерное американское вранье. Уже известного достаточно, чтобы почувствовать новую атмосферу ожесточенности, которой...
Observers say the Kremlin's underlying goal of this kind of saber rattling is to reinforce Russia's stature as a nuclear superpower on par with the U.S. and to distract from an economic recession.
Armageddon, those prophecies mean that Armageddon is 1,000 years away or day after tomorrow. Now, with regard to having to say whether we would try to survive in the event of a nuclear war, of course we would.
Speak about destruction! Speak about destruction! Speak about destruction! This is a world destruction. Your life ain't nothing. The human race is becoming a disgrace. Countries are fighting in chemical warfare, giving a damn about the people who live there. Nostradamus predicted the coming of the Antichrist. Hey, look out! The third world nations are on the rise. A democratic communist relationship won't stand in the way of the Islamic boss. The CIA is looking for other tactics. The KGB is smarter than you think. Brainwash mentalities to control the system using TV and movies, religions of course. Yes, the world is heading for destruction. This is nuclear war. What are you asking for? This is the world destruction. Your life
signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.